Falter-Podcasts werden durch Werbung unterstützt. Das hilft bei der Finanzierung unseres journalistischen Angebots. Falter-Radio, der Podcast mit Raimund Löw.
Sehr herzlich willkommen, meine Damen und Herren, im Falter-Radio. Vergewaltigung als Waffe und der 7. Oktober, das ist das Thema dieser Sendung. Gewalt gegen Frauen gehört in Kriegen zu den furchtbaren Auswirkungen explodierender Brutalität. Beim Pogrom der Hamas nach dem Ausbruch aus Gaza am 7. Oktober sind Frauen erniedrigt, missbraucht und entführt worden. Die Zentren für Vergewaltigungsopfer in Israel, die Rape Crisis Center, haben dokumentiert, was passiert ist. Tessa Szyszkowitz spricht mit zwei führenden Aktivistinnen, Orit, Sulitzeanu und Carmit, Klar-Chalamish, über die Vergewaltigungen des 7. Oktober und allgemein die Rolle von Gewalt gegen Frauen im israelisch-palästinensischen Konflikt. Das Gespräch wird auf Englisch geführt.
Welcome, Orit, Sulitzeanu and Carmit, Klar-Chalamish. You are both working for the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel. Orit, you're the executive director, and Carmit is the head of the research department. We have a heavy topic to talk about today. We are talking about rape as a weapon of war, and especially about what happened on October 7th in Israel at the attack of Hamas, which killed so many people with so much violence. And we are also talking about the political consequences and the war in Gaza afterwards and what it means for your research into the violence of October 7th. Because there's a lot of debate on the facts and the figures, but also on the credibility, claims and counterclaims. And we want to have a very good deep look into this to also understand better how difficult your work is and also how important it is to shed a light on the truth of October 7th and everything that went on. So first of all, welcome and thank you for coming to our podcast studio.
Thank you for inviting us.
June 19th is the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict. This is one of the reasons why you came also this week to Vienna. Sadly, as we know, rape is a weapon of war and is not likely to be excluded from wars in the near future. You, Carmit, have written the report for the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel, and you also submitted it to the United Nations in February, detailing the sexual violence committed by Hamas on October 7th against women in several places. First of all, on the Supernova Music Festival near Re'im, then in the Gaza border communities in the kibbutzim, in the military bases infiltrated by Hamas. At the beginning of the attack, you also detailed in your report that sexual violence was committed and is sadly probably ongoing now in Gaza because there are still hostages in Gaza. So what is the significance, Carmit, of your report when you collected the evidence and when you reported it?
Okay, so the first thing I said, I think that it's important to say that we tried to organize all the information we had at this time. It was February when we published it, but we were working on it for a long time. It was very hard process, and we got a lot of bits of information from a lot of places. It was like formal information, also media publications, and we got some information from professionals that we cannot talk about. It's confidential. So we got all the information and tried to build the puzzle and to understand what happened on October 7th. And it took some time, and then we saw the big picture. We saw the places that the atrocities took place, and we tried to define the practices the Hamas terrorists used to conduct rape as a weapon of war. And it's not only rape, it's a lot of
sadistic torture.
Yeah, so So that's what we did. In regular times, we are dealing with sexual harassment, incest, we are promoting legislation, or it will talk about it. And I never thought I will deal with those things. It was new to us, and we needed to do it. We felt this was our mission to do it. So it was very important on one hand and very hard on the other hand.
I mean, it must have been terrifying for you and horrifying to go into the details, to also talk to survivors of the massacre and bring the stories out of them in order to document them. And it must have been for them also traumatizing to even talk about it.
Now when I'm thinking about it, it looks like, how did I do it? But I don't know. It was like a mission. Like our soldiers are fighting, and this was our mission, our national mission, maybe international mission, to do it at this time. And we just did it.
I mean, Orit, you sort of have dealt with the rape crisis centers for a few years, and they were sort of put together from, I think, 9 different rape centers originally in the 90s to, investigate mostly probably rapes that occur in the society, in the homes, in a civilian kind of circumstance. So now you're in a war situation where this act of Hamas is also seen as an act of war and a crime against humanity. We are, of course, now in 9 months into this renewed conflict. How does that influence your work now, also talking about what happened on October 7th? Because for many people, October 7th is one thing that should be discussed, but there's also, of course, the work that has caused already up to 40,000 deaths in Gaza. A lot of Israeli soldiers have died. There's a lot of new terrible news coming in. So is it difficult to keep the focus? And also, do we need to keep the focus now on what happened October 7th and why?
It's a very good question what you're asking me, and because we're dealing with that also internally in our organization. And as Carmit said, and I want to emphasize it, we did not plan to do a report in the beginning. What we did plan to do, and I remember myself calling Carmit every day, really in the first week, and we were talking about information we got about what had happened. And I was telling Carmit, Carmit, if somebody is telling me the information, and I will tell you also who, they are telling it to me or to Carmit or to our other colleagues, it's because of our special place in the Israeli society. We're an NGO, the Association of Rape Crisis Centers. We don't get money from the government. We're the advocacy organization, the main advocacy organization in Israel to fight sexual violence, and we know everybody almost in the field of sexual violence. And we were starting to get stories from especially first responders, therapists and doctors, not from survivors. I have to emphasize that they are traumatized. But we got information, and I understood very quickly that what we know, nobody else knows. This information is like, oh my God. First of all, we didn't believe it was true, but then I said, okay, let's write it down. Let's write down who tells us the information, what happened, where did it happen, and have some kind of database. The question you ask, how did it influence us? We did not plan to do it, but we felt it's our mission. But the horrific things that happened influenced our society, influenced even our calls to the rape crisis centers. We see many victims from the past are so triggered, so traumatized, they call again and again. Suddenly they cannot work. Suddenly they're scared. Suddenly their houses are not secure. Because what happened in the South, the penetration to the houses and to the women's bodies it's a national trauma, and people who are traumatized from the past are more triggered. And we ourselves are very focused because our organization, we're not the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're an NGO. We came, all of us, to do this work because it's our passion to help survivors of sexual violence and to fight that. We never thought we will deal with the war. But we feel two things. First of all, we're very focused not to forget regular life. Maybe 85% of what we do is regular life. All kinds of laws and processes and policies we want to promote and to help victims in many, many things. But the war has such a huge influence about all of the country and about our issue especially. So it triggers so much and the needs are so much. And we do think that because we have the capacity, we're very professional in researching. Carmit did a lot of research about sexual violence. She has a PhD in this issue also. So we have a lot of capacity to understand the situation deeply, and we're credible because from the day we were established in 1990, it was our mission not to get money from the Israeli government because we want to be free to advocate, to go against the government when we think the government does mistakes. And we want to be out of the political partisan arena. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure it gives us a lot of credibility also internationally because, we are feminists who fight against one of the most horrific things, sexual violence, internally and internationally.
Carmit, to come to the research and to the scope, because in the first weeks, it was all very, very complicated to get numbers together. As we know now, there were about 1,200 people killed on that day in terms of rapes, because I read in your report that there is no precise number because in many cases you didn't know if they were, before they were killed, sexually assaulted.
We still don't know the real numbers and maybe we'll never know them. But it's important also to talk about people who saw it. And also first responders that came to give help and saw everything there. They are, in my opinion, they are also victims of this situation, and maybe all of us, because our lives changed forever. We know that we will never feel the same, and sometimes we are talking to people in Israel and to women in Israel, and they are saying that our nightmares has been changed because now we are afraid from other things. It will take some time to understand how October 7th changed our life. And these days we're trying to find the way to promote healing. And first of all, I think the first thing that need to happen is to release our hostages. And you said October 7th was one thing, but as we are talking now, some women and men are being in tunnels with no light and maybe tortured. We don't know. And I cannot understand how we are being here and it's a nice city. We were walking outside and we said, wow, there is life. And it's so nice while our brothers and sisters are still there, and it could be us. It's unbelievable.
In Israel, of course, you had always a sort of normal life in the middle of an emergency situation, because since 1948 there was no peace on a permanent basis and not with everyone around you. Life has returned, of course, to Israelis outside of the immediate war situation and the hostage situation. And there was a video when Noa Armagami was released that people who were sitting on the beach in Tel Aviv were clapping and were very happy that she was released. And that, for me, was an image which brought home the situation, which is, of course, very schizophrenic, that, of course, you have a normal life. You have to go on. You cannot sort of, just not continue living. But at the same time, everyone, of course, is very aware that the situation is not resolved and there are still hostages in Gaza. But to come back to the point with these numbers, I don't want to press you on that, but I think it's important for people to understand what you found. Because it says in the report that it was clear that it was sort of a strategic mission by Hamas, not only to kill and to take hostage, but also to commit these sadistic torture and rapes and gang rapes. So what is the evidence for that?
We have a lot of pieces of information that talks about bodies that were wounded and mutilated, abused, and with weapons in genital organs, and like it's sadistic acts that were conducted to them. It's not just killing. If you want to kill someone, you just kill him or take him as a prisoner or hostage. But if you want to torture someone or frighten the whole community, whole country, so you take a picture and you torture him, and then everyone else are frightened. And we understood that those things happened in different arenas at the same time. So I'm not a Hamas expert. But if I try to imagine, it's like they went with the same page that says what they have to do when they come to Israel. Because it was, I guess, at the same time in different arenas, because someone who went to the IDF base didn't go to the Nova Festival party. And they did the same things. So this is what we wrote about. And we don't have the exact numbers, but every practice we defined, it's based on a lot of information. First responders and professionals said the same things, so we defined it. And we have more information that we didn't include because we didn't have enough information. So we took only the things that had ground base.
There was videos that were taken by Hamas themselves, but also by security cameras. So we do know that a lot of the most terrible acts have actually happened. Of course, we also have stories that have turned out later not to be true, because people who were in shock often sort of exaggerated things, or they thought they saw something that could not be verified. There is one case which has come up again and again, which even came up in a parliament debate in March, still by a liberal politician in Germany, who said a pregnant woman, her belly was cut open and the baby was killed. This is sort of the bottom of the abyss of what violence can do to any of us. But this has not been verified. Orit, can you confirm that?
By chance, I've got an explanation about this pregnant woman, and I want to tell you something about information. The way information came to all of us was not systemized, and there is this kind of perception which is not practical and not reasonable, that everything will be so scientific. There are corpses, and the police will come and photograph everything, and we will take open DNA kits. This is a war. The 7th of October was the most horrific thing that happened to our country. And there was the Holocaust and this thing. It's horrible. Sadistic, massacre, horrific. We were caught by surprise. It was a huge tragedy. And the way the system in our country is, we don't have a lot of forensic doctors. Israel is very small. I don't know exactly the number, but it's a very small unit in Israel, forensic doctors. Nobody in the beginning even thought that they have to send forensic doctors. They sent the soldiers. I know from my friend, her son, who is 21 years old, was sent to one of the kibbutzim. And imagine a young guy, 21 years old, coming and seeing a naked woman, her breast cut off, her genitals shot. He's one person who sees one thing. He's not an expert. And what is his job? To bring all the people alive, to save them. That's his main job. And afterwards to take the bodies. And then we have got in Israel another unit, which is the volunteers. And they're called Zaka. They're ultra-religious people. And their mission in the world is not to let any piece of Jewish blood or Jewish corpse, usually talking about terrorist attacks when a person is shot and parts of his body are all over the place. The Zaka volunteers' mission, according to the Jewish religion, is to take all the body, put it in some kind of sack to burial. They are not forensic doctors. They are volunteers. And they went, and in different places, they saw the same things. They tried to explain to themselves and to the public. Some of them did mistakes, but it was a mistake. Now, I want to tell you the story about the pregnant woman. Yes. I myself, because I immediately, in the beginning, I wanted to know everything and to see everything. So I went on Telegram the first time in my life, because in there you saw everything. I wanted to. It was important for me to be able to talk about things I saw. And I saw two things. And only once I did this mistake. I saw a video of a pregnant woman with a belly cut off. I didn't even dare to look. I sort of peeked at that because I was scared. And then another video clip of a Zaka volunteer saying We saw a corpse of a woman and her belly cut off, and he gave the explanation that her baby was taken out. I couldn't understand how these two things go together, because I heard after a while that this video clip is not from Israel. It's from another country in Latin America, I think. But I was wondering. And then 2 months ago, I was meeting with the Prime Minister of Belgium to talk about our report. And next to me was an Israeli doctor who is an expert in also forensic evidence of rape kits and all of this information. And she told me the real story. And what is the real story? The real story was that indeed they found a corpse of a woman with a belly cut off. This is truth. And this is sadistic and horrible. But what came out of the stomach was not a baby, but intestines. The Zaka volunteer, he saw reality. He saw a dead woman, the stomach cut off. Yeah, that's true. His interpretation was wrong, but these kind of mistakes, I'm sure, happened all over the world and happened in Israel.
And it's important for me to say that we didn't include in the report any videos, footages. It's based on information that we got from people, not pictures or footages, because we are in the AI era. We don't know what's true, and this is evidence for it.
We are really in a post-truth situation now, where a lot of social media claims are being carried around. And the other thing was the 40 babies that were beheaded, where it comes again and again. Also because, as far as I understand it, maybe not 40, but there was beheadings of grown-ups and also of maybe one baby. I mean, it's for me really difficult to even talk about that. I'm not a professional in talking about sort of these atrocities, but do you have any evidence on this? I mean, this of course is not also part of your report on sexual violence.
As I told you, I myself went on Telegram and saw everything. You have to understand something. What the Hamas did in the beginning, and then they changed their strategy. In the beginning, they went inside. We saw also on television journalists. I think one was from, BBC or Reuters, right? I think it was Reuters that worked for Reuters, but they were invited to come with the Hamas to film what was going on. And they had the GoPro cameras. And what they did, they returned home on the 7th of October, downloaded the materials, and put it on the Hamas in Telegram. And then they were bragging, oh, look at us, we're real men, we won Israel, look what we did. They did not understand that what they're doing, they're proving that they did crimes against humanity. So when they put everything in the beginning, in the first few days, it took time. Israelis were very quick. They downloaded all of the stuff and opened many other groups in the Telegram. They called it like the 7th of October slaughter, the 7th of October massacre, Hamas atrocities, all kinds of groups like that. I watched everything. All the information was downloaded. Afterwards, Hamas understood after a few days that what they are doing is counterproductive, so they stopped it. I myself saw beheaded people, beheaded soldiers, burned bodies, a baby in a cradle, a few months old, killed and all his body stained, bodies on the floor stained. Not everything was filmed. And I was asked, and it's important for me to share with you, I was asked this question not once, not twice, not 3 times, and I think also my colleague here, Carmit, we were asked, how come we do not see rape on these video clips? I must confess, this question made me angry. And I think Hamas terrorists, they were smart, and they know what is not accepted by the Quran and by Islam, and they did not photograph themselves or did not upload, if they have this kind of material, but maybe they did not upload it on social media. And afterwards, as Carmit just mentioned, from time to time, there are video clips that the Israeli Secret Service posts on the social media because of the world denial. The last one that we saw in Israel was a father, 40 years old, a son, 18 years old, talking about how both of them and another friend of the son raped a woman in one of the kibbutzim, all 3 of them, and killed her. there are more examples like that. I think as time will go by, we will get more information. And Carmit, right? You learned more information as time went by.
Yeah, we know more things now, but I think that it's not about the numbers, because this thing happened and it was horrible and we can talk about it for hours. And it doesn't matter if it's 10 or 20 or 50. I don't know why people ask about it, because 10 is enough, and the invasion of the Hamas to the houses and to rape someone in her own bed or in children's room, it's, I don't know, numbers is...
One is more than enough. And we, because we're professionals in this issue of sexual violence, we've got the people who died, all of these bodies that were found half naked, and it's enough. Even if you just take off a woman's body and you don't rape her, this is sexual violence, okay? Then you've got the first responders who saw, then you've got the hostages who suffered, and then you also have got the witnesses who hid, could not save anyone, and there are a few dozens of these in Israel that are known about. Maybe, I think, at least about 30 plus minutes.
Some of them are feeling very guilty of standing behind and not helping. So
your report was also backed up by a UN report in this spring by Pramila Patten, who is the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict. And she conducted her own mission, where she found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that militants from Gaza did perpetrate sexual violence during the attack on Israel that day, including rape or gang rape in at least 3 locations. So basically, it is not your belief or your claim. It is not the claim of all sorts of other organizations. It's also the UN who backed this claim. So is the case closed in terms of proving that rape happened, or do you feel that you still have to fight to be heard, that people are not trying to say like it never happened?
I think that in Israel we don't have to prove anything. Everyone understands what happened. But out of Israel, we get some reactions of denial. And you asked us before all the hard questions. And it's interesting why people have to ask it or doubt it, because we know that these things happened.
Well, the Holocaust deniers till today, and you would wonder why it has to be proven again and again. And a lot of people might have sinister reasons why they don't believe it. Maybe they're sort of not open to the suffering on the Jewish side. Maybe because they're anti-Semitic. Maybe because they're busy with their own suffering. I mean, the war, of course, makes it much more difficult to keep the attention on what happened to Israelis on October 7th, because there's so much destruction in Gaza and so much violence against the civilians there that some people there might not be willing to talk about, to keep up empathy for victims, civilian victims on the Israeli side.
I have two things to answer to you. My name is Orit Sulitzeanu. My mother was in the Holocaust from the age of 10 till the age of 16, and she ended in Auschwitz. And I lived with a mother who had a number here on her arm, and she was so embarrassed of this tattooed number by the Nazis, she used to put a Band-Aid on that number. So many times when both of us talk with the foreign people, I feel, a heavy burden on my shoulder and Carmit's shoulders that, I lived with the Holocaust. I know exactly what it is to live with somebody who was so traumatized by the Holocaust, and then people can say to me, it did not happen. And it makes me sad, angry, and I don't have other words. This is like my personal point of view, that there's a lot of suffering in Gaza. Some people who died there are innocent, not everybody. Children and women who are suffering. And it's very sad, and I wish there was no war.
There are also victims of the situation. There are also a lot of victims in Gaza.
Right. And we did not want it. We did not start it. We want it to end. And if the Hamas people terrorists will return the hostages, it will help end this horrific situation that they're causing it. And I think from what I read, they don't care about their civilians. They care about their big strategy. And the people who are not politicians suffer a lot. And this is very sad.
So as you say, there are victims that are innocent on both sides, obviously. There are also not only women who get raped, there are also men who get raped, and also on both sides. It's sort of something that, you look at me like this.
Yes.
I read in the New York Times the report now that was published recently on the State Teman detention camp where Palestinian prisoners, they were raped by Israeli soldiers. And it's called Inside the Base, where Israel has detained thousands of Gazans. So what can we say about these allegations? Are these allegations credible? The New York Times is not...
I want to be very careful because we deal with sexual violence and we know how much denial exists. I always say that we have to check any allegations. But I want to tell you one example, and that's why for us as mothers and all the Israeli mothers and fathers who send their kids to the army to protect the country, unfortunately some of us are terrified. They don't sleep at night because we're so scared our children will return in a coffin, dead. If there are complaints, or it should be checked, because this is sexual violence, and as much as I want people to believe what I say, I don't want them to deny what we say, and we are a non-governmental organization. Things can happen, and sexual violence happens all over, and it could happen also in the Israeli army because, sexual violence is part of the horrible things that happen in every society. The only big difference, when you compare something, you have to do it in a wise way and not just demagogic way. And what do I mean? In Israel, the army does not have any strategic plan to abuse rape. It's against the law. And our children who go there are law-abiding citizens. But not everybody is like that. And every society has people who do bad things and horrific things. But there's a big difference between doing something systematic, planned, intentional, sent to do that.
And there is also a big difference between prisoners and innocent people that are sleeping in their beds. It's a big difference. It's not like going into someone's house and taking him hostage and killing him, shooting him. It's other things.
Of course, it's a delicate situation, but this is, for my opinion, there's a big difference between something systematic, planned as part of the big plan, and then non-abiding law soldiers who do what they feel like. And it could happen because soldiers can also rape Jewish women. We have complaints in our rape crisis centers of many people who were raped, women. Some of them were raped by soldiers. From time to time, there are scandals in Israel about somebody from the army who did horrific things. And it also happens in the Marines, and it happens in other places, and it's horrible. This is my answer to this kind of question.
I think it's very important, and this is why you're here today, here also on this podcast, not to have, as your report is titled, Silent Cries, not to have cries of victims of rape go silent. And it's very important to investigate, to report on it, to talk about it, and to also keep up the law that forbids it against civilians in any case, and also in an army, in a political organization to call for it. I mean, we really have to keep our standards concerning not letting rape be used as a weapon in wars. So I want to thank you very much, Orit, Sulitzeanu and Carmit Klar-Chalamish of the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel to come here today and talk to us about it. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Die beiden Frauen, die Sie in diesem Gespräch mit Tessa Szyszkowitz gehört haben, sind führend in der Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel tätig. Orit Sulitzeanu ist Direktorin, Carmit Klar-Chalamish leitet das Research Department. Ich verabschiede mich von allen, die uns auf UKW zuhören. Berichte aus dem Nahen Osten und anderen Krisengebieten finden Sie regelmäßig im Falter. Ein Abonnement des Falter kann ich Ihnen nur ans Herz legen. Alle Informationen gibt es im Internet unter der Adresse abo.falter.at. Ursula Winterauer hat die Signation gestaltet. Miriam Hübel betreut die Audiotechnik für diese Sendung. Ich verabschiede mich bis zur nächsten Folge.
Sie hörten das Falter-Radio, den Podcast mit Raimund Löw.